The Joe Rogan Experience, hosted by Joe Rogan, is a modern-day Colosseum of ideas, captivating millions with its unfiltered long-form conversations. Despite controversies, Rogan's influence is undeniable, shaping public discourse with an estimated audience of over 11 million listeners per episode. Donald Trump's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience was a calculated gamble to bypass mainstream media and connect directly with Rogan's vast audience. Rogan faced criticism for hosting Trump, accused of normalizing his views and failing to challenge his claims. As the interview approached, anticipation reached fever pitch, with the internet buzzing and news outlets analyzing the potential implications. The day of the interview arrived with a palpable sense of anticipation, a digital hush before the storm. Trump, relaxed in the informal setting, engaged in a free-flowing conversation with Rogan, covering a range of topics from his presidency to his personal life. Rogan's studio, adorned with memorabilia, created an intimate atmosphere for the interview. Trump, stepping into Rogan's world, faced no time limits or pre-approved questions, just an unfiltered conversation. Rogan's engaging questions delved into Trump's thoughts on various issues, maintaining an air of respectful curiosity. Rogan's conversational style allowed Trump to speak at length without immediate pushback. Critics argued this approach let Trump control the narrative and spread misinformation unchallenged. Supporters praised Rogan for fostering open dialogue and challenging conventional wisdom. Trump commanded the attention of Rogan's audience, spinning yarns and delivering his trademark pronouncements. Rogan, playing the attentive listener, allowed Trump to dictate the conversation's pace and direction. Critics raised concerns about the role of Rogan's platform in disseminating information and shaping public discourse. Trump's supporters overwhelmingly approved of the interview, viewing it as a validation of their beliefs. The direct line of communication with Rogan's audience solidified Trump's support among his base. The interview served as a rallying cry, reinforcing Trump's message and emboldening his supporters. Trump's unfiltered style on Rogan's podcast resonated with those yearning for authenticity. His willingness to speak his mind and challenge conventional wisdom appealed to those disillusioned by traditional politics. The interview solidified Trump's appeal among those valuing straight talk and a disdain for political correctness. Trump's appearance on Rogan's podcast provided a unique opportunity to reach Rogan's dedicated listenership. Rogan's audience, skeptical of traditional media, found Trump's outsider message appealing. The interview highlighted the growing influence of alternative media platforms in shaping public discourse and political opinions. Validation and vindication fueling the MAGA movement. In the aftermath of the interview, Trump's campaign seized upon the positive response from his base, using it to fuel the narrative of a resurgent MAGA movement. Clips of the interview, carefully curated to highlight Trump's most resonant pronouncements, were shared widely on social media, accompanied by triumphant declarations of victory and pronouncements of a looming political comeback. The interview, initially conceived as a way to reach a new audience, quickly morphed into a powerful tool for energizing Trump's existing supporters and reinforcing their belief in his message. The interview also served to further solidify the bond between Trump and his base, creating a sense of shared grievance and a common enemy in the form of the fake news media and the deep state forces they believed were aligned against them. Trump's attacks on these perceived enemies, delivered with his trademark bluster and bravado, resonated deeply with his supporters, who saw in him a fearless fighter willing to take on the establishment on their behalf. The interview, far from being a one-off event, became a touchstone for Trump's supporters, a rallying cry for their movement, and a source of validation for their unwavering belief in his leadership. It reinforced the narrative that Trump was a victim of a biased media and a corrupt political system, a narrative that resonated deeply with his base and fueled their determination to see him restored to power. The interview, in many ways, marked a turning point in the post-presidency chapter of Trump's career, breathing new life into his movement and setting the stage for his return to the political arena. While Trump's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience was met with jubilation among his supporters, it elicited a very different reaction from his detractors. A chorus of condemnation erupted from critics across the political spectrum, who accused Rogan of providing a dangerous platform for Trump's unsubstantiated claims and inflammatory rhetoric. The interview, far from being a harmless exercise in free speech, was seen as a reckless act of irresponsibility, a normalization of extremism, and a threat to the very fabric of American democracy. The backlash was swift and relentless, with journalists, politicians, and commentators taking to traditional and social media platforms to denounce the interview and question Rogan's journalistic integrity. Fact-checking websites worked overtime, dissecting Trump's claims and exposing their inaccuracies, while opinion pieces lambasted Rogan for his failure to challenge Trump's assertions or provide counterpoints from opposing viewpoints. The interview became a lightning rod for criticism, a symbol of the dangers of unchecked misinformation and the growing influence of alternative media platforms. For many critics, the interview was not merely an example of poor journalism, but a deliberate act of complicity in spreading harmful disinformation. They argued that Rogan, by platforming Trump and allowing him to spout unsubstantiated claims without challenge, was actively contributing to the erosion of trust in democratic institutions and the polarization of American society. The interview, they argued, was not about fostering open dialogue or exploring diverse perspectives, but about amplifying a dangerous narrative that threatened the very foundations of American democracy. At the heart of the criticism leveled against Rogan was the concern that, by providing Trump with an uncritical platform, he was amplifying disinformation and legitimizing dangerous conspiracy theories. Trump, during the interview, had repeated many of the unfounded claims that had become central to his narrative of a stolen election, including allegations of widespread voter fraud, rigged voting machines, and a conspiracy involving foreign governments and shadowy domestic forces. These claims, despite being repeatedly debunked by election officials, courts, and independent fact-checkers, continued to hold sway among a significant portion of Trump's base, fueled by his own pronouncements, and amplified by a network of sympathetic media outlets and online platforms. Critics argued that Rogan, by allowing Trump to repeat these claims unchallenged, was providing them with a veneer of credibility and legitimacy, lending them weight and influence that they did not deserve. They pointed to the potential harm of such unchecked disinformation, particularly in an already polarized political climate where trust in institutions was low and susceptibility to conspiracy theories was high. The interview, they argued, was not merely a harmless conversation, but a potentially dangerous act that could further erode trust in democracy and fuel political instability. The concern about the spread of disinformation was not limited to the specific claims made by Trump during the interview, but extended to the broader erosion of trust in reliable sources of information. By allowing Trump to repeat debunked claims and attack the credibility of legitimate news organizations, Rogan, critics argued, was contributing to a climate of skepticism and distrust that made it increasingly difficult to distinguish fact from fiction, truth from falsehood. This erosion of trust, they feared, could have far-reaching consequences, undermining public faith in institutions, hindering efforts to address pressing societal challenges, and creating fertile ground for extremism and political violence. The backlash against Rogan was not limited to accusations of journalistic malpractice, but also extended to his own personal credibility and political leanings. Critics, pointing to his past statements critical of Trump and his policies, accused him of hypocrisy and opportunism, suggesting that his decision to host Trump was motivated more by ratings and a desire to court controversy than by a genuine commitment to open dialogue or journalistic integrity. The interview, they argued, exposed Rogan's own biases and revealed him to be more interested in entertainment and generating buzz than in engaging in substantive discussions about important issues. The accusations of hypocrisy stung, particularly given Rogan's carefully cultivated persona as an independent thinker, a truth seeker, and a challenger of conventional wisdom. He had in the past expressed reservations about Trump's character and policies, describing him as a man-baby and a threat to democracy. His decision to provide Trump with a platform, particularly one where he faced minimal pushback, seemed to contradict these earlier pronouncements, leading some to question whether his views had evolved or whether he was simply willing to set aside his principles for the sake of a high-profile guest and the accompanying publicity. The interview also sparked a broader debate about the role and responsibility of platforms like Rogan's in the digital age. As traditional media outlets struggled to adapt to the changing landscape and combat the spread of misinformation, platforms like Rogan's, with their massive reach and devoted followings, had emerged as powerful forces in shaping public opinion. The question of whether these platforms had a responsibility to fact-check their guests, provide balanced perspectives, and avoid amplifying harmful content became a central point of contention, with no easy answers or clear consensus. Adding further fuel to the firestorm surrounding the interview was the perceived influence of Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. Musk, a friend and occasional guest on Rogan's podcast, had been a vocal critic of COVID-19 lockdowns and government mandates, often echoing Trump's own rhetoric on these issues. His acquisition of Twitter, a platform frequently used by Trump and his supporters to spread misinformation, had raised concerns about the potential for the platform to become an even more potent vector for disinformation and hate speech. Critics pointed to Musk's influence on Rogan, suggesting that he had played a role in shaping the podcast host's views on COVID-19, free speech, and the limits of acceptable discourse. They argued that Rogan, once a voice of reason and moderation, had become increasingly aligned with Musk's libertarian worldview, embracing a laissez-faire approach to content moderation and downplaying the harms of misinformation. The interview with Trump, they argued, was a direct result of this influence, a manifestation of Rogan's embrace of a Muskian worldview that prized free speech above all else, regardless of the consequences. The Musk connection, whether real or perceived, added another layer of complexity to the already heated debate surrounding the interview. It highlighted the growing influence of tech billionaires like Musk in shaping public discourse and the challenges of holding powerful individuals accountable in an era of decentralized media and online echo chambers. The interview, far from being an isolated incident, became a symbol of the larger forces at play, a microcosm of the battles over information, power, and the future of democracy itself. The fallout from the Trump interview was perhaps most acutely felt within the sprawling and diverse community of the Joe Rogan Experience itself. The podcast, with its eclectic mix of guests and its free-flowing, often unpredictable conversations, had always attracted a broad and heterogeneous listenership, united by a shared curiosity and a willingness to engage with a wide range of perspectives. However, the Trump interview exposed the fault lines within this seemingly cohesive community, revealing a deep and passionate divide over the role of the podcast, the limits of acceptable discourse, and the responsibilities of a platform as influential as Rogan's. The response from Rogan's listeners was immediate and visceral, a torrent of comments, tweets, and online forum posts flooding the digital landscape. The spectrum of reactions was as diverse as the listenership itself, ranging from enthusiastic praise to utter condemnation, with a significant contingent expressing confusion, disappointment, and a sense of betrayal. Longtime listeners who had come to view Rogan as a trusted source of information and a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world struggled to reconcile the interview with their perception of the podcast and its host. The interview forced many within the JRE community to confront their own biases, their tolerance for dissenting views, and their expectations for a platform that had become a fixture in their lives. It sparked countless debates about the nature of free speech, the responsibilities of content creators, and the role of alternative media in a democratic society. The interview, far from being a self-contained event, became a catalyst for introspection and dialogue, forcing listeners to grapple with uncomfortable questions about their own values and the future of the platform they held dear. The divisions within the JRE community mirrored, in many ways, the broader societal rifts that had come to define American life in the age of Trump. The interview served as a litmus test for political allegiances, revealing the extent to which even seemingly apolitical spaces, like a comedy podcast, had become infused with partisan passions. Listeners who had previously coexisted peacefully within the JRE universe, united by a shared love of long-form conversations and Rogan's affable interviewing style, found themselves at odds, their differences amplified by the polarizing figure at the center of the controversy. The interview also highlighted the challenges of maintaining a sense of community in an increasingly fragmented and polarized media landscape. With listeners retreating into their own echo chambers, consuming news and information that reinforced their existing beliefs, platforms like Rogan's, which aspired to bridge divides and foster dialogue, faced an uphill battle. The Trump interview, rather than uniting the JRE community, seemed to exacerbate its internal divisions, pushing listeners further apart and making it more difficult to find common ground. Despite the acrimony and the sense of betrayal expressed by some, the JRE community for the most part weathered the storm. The podcast, perhaps to the surprise of some, did not implode under the weight of the controversy. Instead, it continued to thrive, its listenership remaining largely intact, a testament to the enduring appeal of Rogan's brand of long-form conversation and his ability to connect with a diverse audience. The Trump interview, while undoubtedly a significant event in the history of the podcast, did not fundamentally alter its DNA or alienate its core audience. In the aftermath of the interview, Rogan found himself in the unenviable position of trying to placate a divided audience while defending his own journalistic integrity. He faced accusations of bias, hypocrisy, and complicity in spreading misinformation, charges he vehemently denied. In subsequent episodes of the podcast, he addressed the controversy head-on, acknowledging the concerns raised by listeners and critics, while defending his decision to host Trump and his approach to the interview. Rogan, while expressing regret for not pushing back more forcefully on some of Trump's claims, maintained that his primary goal was to allow the former president to speak freely and to expose his listeners to a different perspective. He argued that platforms like his were essential for fostering open dialogue and challenging conventional wisdom, even if it meant providing a platform for views that some found objectionable. He reiterated his commitment to free speech, arguing that it was more important than ever to protect the right to dissent, even if it meant occasionally amplifying voices that some found offensive or harmful. Rogan's response to the controversy was met with mixed reactions. Some listeners appreciated his willingness to engage with their concerns and his defense of free speech principles, while others remained unconvinced, viewing his explanations as inadequate or self-serving. The controversy, regardless of whether one agreed with Rogan's handling of it, highlighted the challenges of navigating the treacherous waters of contemporary political discourse, particularly for those who aspired to remain above the fray and appeal to a broad and diverse audience. Despite the controversy, the Trump interview did little to diminish Rogan's popularity or the allure of his platform. The Joe Rogan Experience, with its massive reach and its reputation as a space for unfiltered conversations, continued to attract a wide range of guests from celebrities and athletes to scientists, intellectuals, and politicians. The podcast in many ways became a microcosm of the broader media landscape, a space where the lines between news, entertainment, and opinion blurred, and where the traditional gatekeepers of information were increasingly irrelevant. The enduring appeal of Rogan's platform, even in the face of intense criticism, spoke to a deeper cultural shift, a growing appetite for authenticity, unfiltered dialogue, and a willingness to engage with challenging and often uncomfortable ideas. In a world saturated with carefully curated online personas and a relentless barrage of bite-sized news snippets, Rogan's podcast offered a refreshing alternative, a space where guests could speak at length, unscripted and uncensored, revealing glimpses of their true selves and offering insights into their thought processes. The Trump interview, while undoubtedly a significant event in the history of the podcast, did not fundamentally alter its trajectory. Rogan, for better or worse, remained a singular force in the media landscape, a testament to the enduring power of conversation, the allure of authenticity, and the hunger for a platform that dared to venture beyond the confines of conventional wisdom. The digital echoes of Donald Trump's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience reverberated long after the final words were uttered and the studio lights dimmed. The interview, a collision of two outsized personalities and their respective spheres of influence, served as a potent microcosm of the broader societal and political divides that had come to define the American landscape. It was a stark reminder of the enduring power of personality-driven media, the challenges of navigating a fragmented and polarized information ecosystem, and the enduring allure of platforms that dared to venture beyond the confines of conventional wisdom. Trump, the master showman, emerged from the encounter seemingly unscathed, his message amplified, his base energized, and his image as a fearless outsider reinforced. Rogan, the affable host, found himself navigating a minefield of criticism, his carefully cultivated persona as a neutral arbiter of conversations challenged, his journalistic integrity questioned, and his platform thrust into the center of a heated debate about the role and responsibility of alternative media in the digital age. The interview, far from providing easy answers or resolving long-standing tensions, served to highlight the complexities of navigating a media landscape increasingly defined by echo chambers, partisan passions, and a blurring of the lines between news, entertainment, and opinion. In the aftermath of the interview, one thing remained clear. The conversation, however messy, controversial, or ultimately inconclusive, was far from over. The digital airwaves continued to buzz with debates about the interview's implications, the role of platforms like Rogan's, the future of political discourse, and the challenges of finding common ground in an era of unprecedented division. The Trump-Rogan encounter, rather than being a singular event, became a catalyst for ongoing conversations about the nature of truth, the limits of free speech, and the responsibilities of those who shape the information we consume. It was a stark reminder that in the digital age, the lines between observer and participant, consumer and creator, are increasingly blurred, and that the conversations we have, both online and offline, have the power to shape our understanding of the world around us. The interview ultimately served as a potent reminder that we are all active participants in the shaping of our shared reality, and that the choices we make, the information we consume, and the conversations we engage in have real-world consequences.